Hey guys, this is Gopi back with another video. In this video, we are going to practically discuss about how to create a table, insert some data into it and fetch some data out of it using SQL query language. First and foremost, let's try to understand how this view looks like and we'll proceed further with that. Once the Management Studio is installed, and this is how it looks like once you open it. First and foremost, it by default comes with Sidebar Object Explorer. This sidebar contains what server that is connected to. You can connect more than one server at a time. I connected to my local server, and this local server comes with some databases. If we expand this database option, it just lists all the databases. What I'm going to do is, to work with the database, we must have to create a database. Without that, you will not able to create any table and all. By default, your Management Studio connect with master database. You can see the currently connected database, which is nothing but master. What am I going to do is, I am going to create a new database. To create any new database, we have to write SQL query. I will tell you what to do. Keep in mind, as I already explained, this SQL server is based on SQL. So we must have to follow the standards provided in the SQL. So to create database, we have to follow create database and then any database name. So I'm just going to name it as tutorial and then a semicolon. That's a standard that we have to follow. Keep in mind, create database and then the database name. And then you can press execute, or else you can press F5 from your keyboard. Both way it will work, shouldn't be an issue. What am I going to do is, let me press F5 from the keyboard and see what I am getting in the output window. Here you can see command completed successfully, which means the query that I executed is completed, but I didn't able to see anything here. Here you can see there is an option called refresh. Click on that refresh button. Once the refresh is done, you can go to the databases and you can see that the tutorial database is created. Now what we have to do is, let's open this database and see what are the things that this database by default comes with. We will be mostly working with this tables option. We have views and then the programmability. So here you can see inside table we haven't created any tables so far. We have an option called programmability. Within that we have an option called store procedure, and these are all the stored procedure that was created and maintained by the server itself. We haven't created anything so far. Likewise, we do have functions. So these are all the things most widely used in SQL Server. Now we create a database. Let's try to create a simple table which contains one or two columns for our understanding purpose. What I do is, let me comment this because I have already created it. Keep in mind, whenever you work with any database, you always wanted to make sure that which database you connected to. As of now, you connected to the master database. Even though you created a new database, the Management Studio will not automatically switch to the newly created database. You have to manually change that. You can manually choose database from this drop down, or else using this command, use tutorial. Okay, select this and then execute by pressing F5 from the keyboard. You can see once the command is completed successfully, you will able to see tutorial in this drop down instead of master, which means you currently connected to the tutorial database. Now you can go ahead and create a table, let's say course table. That was the one we taken as an example in the last video. Let's continue do that. To create a table, as like database, we have to follow some structure, and that's what we are going to do now. So create, this is a table, so you must have to follow table, and then you have to use a table name. So what could be the name? Course. I'll just name it as course. This course is nothing but the table name, and we are going to add a few columns into that. So the first and foremost column is nothing but ID. So as like employee ID, I'm going to have one ID for each record, and I wanted to make sure that each and every record is uniquely identified through that ID column. So what kind of value or else what kind of data that I'm going to store in this ID column? That is nothing but integer. So let me mark it as integer. And then I'm going to mark this column as primary key. So this primary key make sure that the ID column does not going to accept any null value or duplicate value, so that I can able to easily identify any record with the ID column value. Along with this, I am going to mark this column as identity 1, 1. So what does this identity means for? This identity tells that you are having a column ID, you don't have to pass any value to this ID column. It will automatically increase. That is what the identity means for. It will auto increment. So now only I am going to create the table. How come the table knows what value needs to be given? And that's what I mentioned it here. Start with 1. And how I wanted to increase the value. Let's say first time if I insert 1 data, then it should be 1. Second time, what could be the value? I want it to increment 1 by 1 or 3, 4 or 4 times or 5 times, something like that, right? And that's what we have mentioned as a second parameter. I wanted to increase 1 by 1. So that's what identity is. Along with this ID, let me going to have a name column. I can just name, and we all know that this name is nothing but a string data. We don't have a string data type in SQL Server. Instead, we will be having varchar of any size. I just name it as 20 for demonstration purpose. So I'm just going to reduce the name value as well to 12. This is the value. That means you can store that much amount of data in that specific column. And then I'm going to mark not null. This not null is a constraint. I'm applying some constraint to the column name. So this constraint makes sure that the column name does not going to have any null value in it, comma, I'm going to have a course. Okay, so course, and this is again going to be a varchar of, I just name it as a 15 or 20, simple as that. Now what I do is, let me select this line and then click on the execute button. You can see the command completed successfully. And then select this table, then click on refresh. It just refresh the list and then will tell you dbo.course. This clearly tells that the table is created under the database tutorial. But the thing is, we have dbo.course. We created only course. What is mean by the dbo? That's nothing but schema. dbo is a default schema name. If you wanted to create your own schema, of course you can create with create schema and then the schema name. Why we need schema? Some projects may wanted to have a different naming convention. Let's say example, I'm creating one application. Okay, in that application I'm going to manage student detail and then the employee detail. If it comes to employee, I'll be having permanent employee and then the temporary employee. In that case, I cannot create every databases, right? What I will be doing is, I'll be creating different schema for different employees. Let's say example, stud.students. So stud is the schema name for all the student related tables. Permanent employee is a schema name for all the permanent employee related tables. Likewise, I can create different schema. Since I haven't created any schema, my SQL Management Studio by default takes DBO as a default schema name, and that's how we get this DBO. So far, we know that how to create a database, how to work with the currently created database, and then how to create a table. Now what I'm going to do is, let's try to insert some record into it. Before inserting any record into it, I will try to just expand this and see what are the columns that I have. I have one ID, name, and then the course. We know that this is the primary key column which does not going to accept null value and all. What I'm going to do is, let me try to insert a record. Insert, where I'm going to insert? I'm going to insert into course table. Into course table, what are the column you are going to pass value to? I'm going to pass value to name and then the course column. Now, what value you are going to pass? And that's what you have to pass it here. For the name column, I'm going to pass my name. For the value course column, I'm going to pass Python. So, one record is created. So, what I do is, let me select this line and then press on this execute button. You can see one row affected, which means a new row got inserted into the table course. I will just duplicate this line, copy, paste it out. Again going to insert one more record, Arun, and Arun going to learn JavaScript. So again let me execute this line by pressing F5 from the keyboard, and you can see that row is also get affected, which means the record got inserted. We know that we have inserted two records. How will I able to visualize that? To visualize that, you have to use select query. So let me execute select star from course and then press F5 from the keyboard. Now you can see we got two different records in the table course. Keep in mind, while creating the table, I explained that this ID column going to auto increment. That is why I added this identity. You can see, right? When I first insert my record, it started with 1. When I insert Arun record, it incremented the value by 1. So 1 and 2. For the demonstration purpose, let me try to copy this line, paste it here. Let me try to insert one more record into it along with ID column. Let's see how it behaves. ID, name and course. Along with Arun and those stuff, I am going to send 100 as the ID value. Instead of Arun, let me have Raja going to learn C#. So let me try to insert this record by selecting and clicking on the execute button here. Now you can see, cannot insert explicit value for the identity column in a table, identity insert is set to off. This is a key, or else you can consider this as a flag. By default, this identity insert is set to false, okay, which means no user allowed to insert any record into this ID column. If this is on, which means you can insert data into it. To turn on this identity insert, you have to execute this command. Set identity insert, and then you have to mention what table it is. I just mention it as a course table, and then type on. You can use small as well, shouldn't be an issue, and then select this, press execute button. Now you can see the command completed successfully. I just again select this insert statement and then execute. Now you can see the row affected, and then run this select query. You can see identity column value also get added with 100. Now what I do is, let me copy this, paste it here. This time I am going to send some other record. So Ruby, learning Ruby. Select this line again and then execute. Now you can see explicit value must be specified for identity column in table course. So this clearly demonstrated that it would be better always to have this identity insert value as off. So let me turn it off and then execute it. Now we are done with it. Now I have the ability to execute this query without any error. If I again execute the select query, you will able to see I'm getting 4 value, but the thing is, fourth value record ID value is 101, which get incremented from 100, not from 2. So that's how this identity works. There is a question, how come this identity able to find out this? That identity is nothing but another concept called trigger. So whenever you do insert operation, the trigger execute behind the screen and try to find out the last ID value from the table and then insert it. And that's how this identity is working. In this video, we have deeply discussed about how to create a table, how to create databases, how to insert some record, how to select query. In the upcoming video, we will be discussing about altering the table, deleting the table record and those kind of the stuff. Till then, bye, take care.